What's up, guys? We are back with another review, taking a look at something very, very different for the channel. An entirely different company that I've never experienced before, and then it's also in some ways transforming toys, which, you know, I don't get too far into, but I do from time to time. But the folks over at 52Toys reached out to have me take a look at some of their new upcoming stuff. So they, of course, make the BeastBox toys, but they've also started making some action figures, some 3 3/4-ish style figures. And we're going to take a look at those. So these are the Hexanoids, and they come in like this set of 2 that have cards that, of course, kind of like lock together. So it has these 2 guys sort of locked in battle. So we're taking a look at UNUS, and I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing that right, and OMEX. And these guys come on similar kind of card backs, but they've got that sort of jagged cut design, so they fit together, so it's, you know, a mirrored type situation. And they're kind of traditional 3 3/4-inch style packaging, so figure they're in the bubble. Some really awesome artwork on the front, kind of showing both of them clashing. And then the back of the packages kind of gives us like a little bit of a write-up. It's in Chinese, and then you've got some product shots showcasing what these guys come with. Now, we're also going to take a look at another figure, and this is an actual BeastBox figure itself. So it's not an action figure, but it is from, of course, the same folks. We're taking a look at the BeastBox PHANTOMASTER. So this is the chameleon, and the whole shtick about these things is that they transform into cubes. But then there are also these, like, you know, animals or things like that. So this guy's pretty cool, and I believe it has a color changing feature, which is also pretty interesting. Now it comes in a pretty standard style package, so you got some really solid artwork of this thing on the front, kind of showcasing all the innards and all the stuff that makes it work. You've got the figure or the toy there in the window, and then you've got some schematics and sort of drawings of how this thing transforms from chameleon to, well, BeastBox. So yeah, we're going to take a look at 2 different kinds of things from 52Toys, so let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package. We're going to start with the Hexanoid figures first. Well, because they're the newest, they're the latest and greatest, they're the new line from 52Toys, and they definitely just seem to be something entirely different from what they normally put out. You know, these aren't transforming animals that become boxes. These are, well, these are legit 3 3/4 action figures. They very much have stylings similar to the BeastBox toys, but they are very much their own thing. The story kind of ties them all together, but they are still very much their own thing. So I'm going to move OMEX aside because they're very much the same kind of figure. We can talk about articulation. So they've got heads that look up. They look down pretty good. You do have some nice tilt side to side, full rotation, of course. Arms out at the shoulders. They rotate. You've got movable shoulder pads, bicep swivel, single jointed elbows, but a solid 90. They've got pegs for the wrists, so there is a little bit of shimmy in and out, up and down, and all around. Torsos are slightly limited. They have, it's a barbell, so it's a double barbell in there, so you've got, you know, good rotation all the way around, really nice tilt side to side. Forward and backward is okay. I wouldn't say it's like a full-on crunch by any means, but it does allow for some posability at the torso. It's certainly not locked down by any means. Legs go out about this far. Not the splits, but it has good range. Kick forward really, really nicely. Kicks backward probably more than you're ever going to need. You've got a thigh cut up there that's hidden really well by this pad. Double jointed knees. It's kind of an awkward cut because of how big it is, but it is incredibly functional, so you've got that little bit of a trade-off. And then down at the ankles, you've got a slight rocker. It's very minimal, but you've got really nice back hinge and a little bit of a kick forward there. So, I mean, definitely in the realm of, you know, super articulated 3 3/4-inch figures. They don't have everything. You know, I wish there was maybe a little bit more at the waist area to allow them to sort of twist and, you know, articulate that torso a little bit better, but there is a lot of posability and a lot of potential just based on what these guys come with right out of the box. Visually is where I was really interested in these, not just because, you know, they're different and they're new and, you know, new to me, of course, but because they're just pretty toyetic designs. Like, these just look like fun figures to me. Right out the gate, they look like fun figures. And they are fun figures, so that helps. They definitely, again, like I said, kind of lean into the same kind of stylings and aesthetic that we see with the BeastBox stuff. Again, I'm not super familiar with BeastBox, but I'm aware of it and I know how it looks and I know the colors used, and everything is usually really bright and vibrant, and that's a big thing for me. I mean, if you're familiar with my stuff, you know I like bright, wacky colors. I love metallics. I love translucent plastic, and these guys have quite a bit of that. You know, you've got your OMEX here with the metallic blue, like that. This ice blue color looks really good. You've got these translucent face plates on these helmets that they wear, and then he's, you know, purple, which is not a common color when it comes to toys in many instances, at least not, you know, action figures that I collect. And then you've got UNUS over here that has tons of metallic by comparison. He's got all of this silver down here, silver on the chest, extra translucent pieces, you know, this little sort of bobble on the chest. They've got these gauntlets, and then he's got this super bright green visor in the helmet. And these guys just look really cool, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. They look cool. There is a decent amount of paint on them, but it's all about the sculpt because they have very unique designs, not from each other specifically, but just in the confines of other figures that I have in this scale. They're definitely going to stand out. You know, they're going to look really different alongside you know, old Marvel Universe stuff or anything Star Wars, really. They definitely will look a little bit different. They feel really good. Like, plastic feels nice. Everything isn't, you know, floppy. I like how tight but not too tight things are. And then again, there is just a decent amount of paint on these two, so that while they do share a lot of parts, like there is a lot of stuff here that's very similar, the way they've colored them kind of makes them stand out a little bit more. Not to mention the fact that they do have different torsos. So OMEX's is different from UNUS here, and that plays up the idea of them, you know, being related but a little bit different. And then they've got different color schemes, so he's got a little bit more of like the wiring in there, whereas this guy's got kind of like a full chest plate of armor with the extra translucent plastic, and they just look really cool. They're going to go really nicely, I think, alongside, you know, if you're a big time BeastBox fan and collector, I think they're going to go along really well with those in terms of just sort of meshing that sort of style and that aesthetic. But if you just want to happen to throw these in with a bunch of other 3 3/4 inch figures, you're probably going to have a good time there as well. They're very different, very unique, and they just look and feel really nice. Now, keeping in line with what is very similar about these two, because, you know, like I said, they share a lot of parts for the most part, except for the torsos and the heads, really. A lot of the other stuff about these figures is very similar. They are very similar when it comes to accessories as well. So they each get 2 extra sets of hands, so 4 extra hands, to complement the 2 they've already got. So they have, you know, sort of splayed finger, open palm style hands right in the box. They get a set of fists. So here's an OMEX hand, an OMEX fist, and then they also get a set of gripping hands. So here's a UNUS hand, a gripping hand. So you can see, of course, they're colored correctly. So his are red, his are purple, and then they get a gun. So they get the same kind of gun, but they are done up in their matching color scheme. So the gray, or sort of black gray, red and green, and then the purple, sort of ice metallic blue, and the gray black color over here. They hold these really well in this, you know, in this gripping hand. It's very nice. It does fit very well. It's not too tight, but it's not loose by any means either. So you'll have an easy time actually getting that in there, and then they can hold on to that just fine. I do kind of wish that they maybe had a little bit of a different kind of gun, you know, one of them to be just a little bit different, but I understand, you know, maybe this line is just now starting out, so to keep things kind of homogenous in many ways. But they do have, you know, kind of the bare bones minimum of what you really need to have here. Some styly pose hands, gripping, you've got your fists, and then of course they both have their weapon. Now, when it comes to the actual BeastBox toy, PHANTOMASTER, this is a very different kind of thing from the Hexanoids. You know, they're related when it comes to the overall idea that they're trying to sell and the storyline and the lore that they're trying to craft here, but they couldn't be further apart when it comes to actually being toys. So this is more in line, you know, with a Transformer, but it's not really like that. It's very different because the whole shtick behind these things is that they turn into cubes, which is frankly incredibly weird to think that how this is going to, because as of this, I've not done it yet. So I'm looking at it first, and then I'm going to figure out how to transform it and see what it takes to turn this into, you know, a 3-dimensional cube. So we've got some articulation on this thing. It's pretty minimal. Mostly it's really just the legs and the head a little bit. Like the head can bobble up and down, tilt side to side. The eyes can move a little bit as well. They do rotate in there, and then they bobble in and out, you know, kind of like a chameleon would, because of course they have independently articulated eyes. You've got, you know, legs that can go in and out, and they swivel, and then they've got hinges, and you've got hinges on the feet. The toes will clasp open and shut.
So you've got that, and then the back legs will also hinge in and out, and they've got, you know, a knee joint, you've got hinge for the feet, and then more of that sort of clawed toe type of situation. The tail is not really articulated, but it has this sort of rubbery thing going on, so you could actually, you know, sort of like hang it from something. It almost kind of does it to support itself if you got it on something taut enough, but it will sort of cinch back. The coolest aspect of this thing, well, it does have a color change feature, which is really cool on its own, but the coolest thing for me when it comes to this thing is this. So these two little spots right here, so this piece and this piece over here, they're buttons. When you press them, the mouth will open and an articulated striking tongue will come out, and it doesn't have an accessory, so you can play up the idea of what a chameleon does, but that is just rad, and I love everything about it. You do kind of have to, you know, shove it back in there, and then it will clip shut, but then you can press those buttons again, and it will fire out that tongue, which I think is just awesome. It's really cool. It's a lot of play value, frankly, that's what it comes down to. Now, of course, there is an aesthetic aspect of this, and this thing does look really cool. I mean, here's the size for it. So, you know, it's not too big. So there's one of the hexanoids, you know, they're 3 3/4, or yeah, roughly 4 inches. So you got an idea in terms of how big this thing is. It's a relatively small piece, but it does have a lot of like telltale chameleon characteristics. So it's obviously meant to be, you know, robotic in nature, you know, not necessarily a real chameleon, but it very much has the right shape. The head in particular, and those eyes, the fact that they are, you know, jutting out into opposite directions, basically, I think do a really good job of selling this. The fact that you can see the tongue just sort of poking through there, you know, it looks like it's ready to strike. The not wired, but very, very flexible and, you know, kind of retracting tail is a really cool feature. I do like that. And just all around the overall sizing and the idea behind this, it does work. It's a cool little thing to just maybe, you know, kind of throw this on your desk, you know, have it just sitting there. There are a few other ways to get this thing to be posed, and there's also another thing you can purchase, which we'll talk about, that will allow you a different way to actually set it up. So a lot of play value with this, not just because of the fact that it transforms into something, but because it's also a really cool looking kind of oddball robo-chameleon that has a pretty striking color, really weird color scheme. You know, it's obviously got all of this blue patterning, and then a bunch of sort of like, you know, techno babble all over it, optical camouflage. And speaking of, it does have one more play factor. So this thing features heat sensitivity, and I believe it's like 95 degrees, so, you know, get yourself a hairdryer out, which is how I did it, or throw it out in the sun. But all of this blue, when it gets hot enough, it will all fade away on the entire toy. So all of the stuff on the legs, the torso, and then all the stuff on the head will disappear, and it will be, you know, in many ways just camouflaged to green, this sort of teal green color, which I think is really cool. You know, that kind of stuff just sort of takes me back to being a kid, because a ton of toys had that kind of stuff, and it's fun to be able to, you know, it's fun to heat up your toys without thinking that you need to do it to fix something, just to be able to play with it, you know, hit it with some heat, watch it change color. That works on its own. So a lot of fun for this weird little chameleon robot, but I still have to figure out, how easy is it to change this into a box? So here's what we end up with after our transformation. And I'll say all of this with the caveat of, I'm not the greatest at doing transformers of any kind. So, you know, actual transformers, BeastBox, it all falls in the same category of, I usually have a hard time with this stuff. So there's a good chance this is not transformed exactly the way it should be. I did have a little bit of a difficulty following some of the instructions, but I think for the most part it came out okay. I mean, it definitely looks like a box, right? And you can see, like, you know, there's the head crammed in there, you know, there's a bunch of stuff in there, the tail's all up in there, and it's pretty weird. Like, honestly, it's just a weird concept for me that this thing kind of translated from, well, what it was, a chameleon, into this. I mean, there's a lot of toy crammed into a very, very small thing. And of course, you know, that's the shtick for this thing, is that these creatures transform into boxes, into these cubes, and that's the way you transform them. Transforming it back into a chameleon, super easy, and I really didn't have any issues with that. But getting all of this stuff sort of crammed into this very small space definitely was a little bit of a challenge for me. But of course, this isn't necessarily, you know, my area of specialty
either. So it's still pretty cool. I doubt I'll ever leave it like this because I think the chameleon form is infinitely cooler just because it's a pretty rad looking form. But this is, I mean, it's pretty weird. It's different and certainly a very unique take on taking a robot and transforming it into something. Now, as far as accessories goes, this thing does have a few, and they all kind of play up the idea of one half of what it is. So you've got some accessories for chameleon form, and to start with, we've got this little thing right here. So this is like a little ladybug. You can just pop it on. It's basically just to sort of add a little bit of something extra to it. And you can pop it on one of those holes. There's one on either side. There's also a bonus item that you can attach it to if you wanted to. We'll talk about that again. And then, you've got, I mentioned this earlier, there is a thing for the tongue. So, we'll pop that tongue out and you've got a little grasshopper here. And it's got a peg on it. And you pop that guy on the end. And this is what sells this thing for me more than anything else, is being able to do something like this. So, you've got it right here. Let's get him back up. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to get these legs to get him up. But there you've got your chameleon, and of course, the tongue, the way it's sort of ejected from the mouth, I think looks really cool. And then you've got it where he's grabbing that grasshopper, or maybe it's a cricket, and pulling it back in. So I do like that. It's definitely the cooler of the two accessories. And then the last thing that we get, I'm assuming this is something that is pretty standard across the board for these. You get the charger box, as it's called. And this, once you've actually got your BeastBox transformed into box mode, you can shove the whole thing in there. So, this whole thing transforms into a cube and gets shoved inside that thing. So you've got a few items, nothing too crazy, but these two really kind of just add a little bit more value to it to maybe change your displayability. And then I think just the idea of having the little bug on the end of the tongue makes it infinitely more fun and cool. Now, there's also a bonus set that goes along with the PhantomMaster Chameleon, and it's this attachment piece for the clear box that you can put the cube form in. So you've got this, it's basically a tree, obviously, so it attaches to the side here, and then you've got a few pivot points, like it can swivel, it can hinge up and down, things like that. It's got a couple other branch pieces here, and then it's got these little modular leaves that you could put on there. So it basically gives you a way to better display this, because frankly, this is the cooler way to display it by far, as far as I'm concerned. It just looks a little bit more, I don't know, realistic is probably not the best way to describe it because it's still a robo-chameleon, but I think it looks a lot cooler this way when you've got it kind of perched up there. It has those limbs sitting in the way that, a chameleon actually would sort of perch on a branch, because of course it has those very specific kinds of feet and toes. So this is pretty cool. It is a little bit modular. It does have some posability when it comes to just moving things around, but it also gives you a way to get it up off of the shelf or whatever you're setting him on, and then you can kind of set a little scene, kind of like a mini diorama almost. So yeah, overall, really happy with these guys. The figures themselves, the Hexanoids, are really super articulated, fun action figures. If you're into, more unique 3 3/4 inch stuff, this is probably something to check out. I do wish they had a little bit more uniqueness when it came to their accessories from one another, but overall I do think they're pretty fun. They have a lot of good finishes, metallic, transparent, all sorts of stuff that I like to see across the board on figures present in these guys right off the bat. And then the PhantomMaster BeastBox is just a whole different level of ridiculousness. It's a chameleon that transforms into a cube that you then shove into another cube, but it works. I do think the transformation is a little bit clunky, but that's maybe just more for me, so take that with a grain of salt. This isn't necessarily, my area of expertise, but the chameleon on its own is a lot of fun. Color change, it's got that, shooting tongue, and it just looks wacky, so it's a lot of fun. And if you get the little bonus add-on, it'll look cool on that perch on your desk or your shelf or whatever. So that's going to do it for this look at the 52 Toys Hexanoids and PhantomMaster BeastBox. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.